My name is Elizabeth Deeck, and I'm here to tell you about my product of learning. This was taught during my student teaching experience, fall of 2015, at Richfield Elementary School. So here's my story. So to begin, this was a science unit. So the two standards that went along with this on the Stanley County Schools Pacing Guide were with force and motion. So the first one was what is a push, what is a pull, and how do you apply these to everyday usage. The next standard was how do you apply those pushes and pull forces to make things move without touching them. So you'll get to see how I use these in each subject and each lesson within these 2 weeks in this POL unit. So here are the other subjects that I taught: math, reading, social studies, and writing, and the standards with each subject that were taught each day or each within this unit. So of course there were other little things touched on, but these were the main standards that I focused on. Here are the materials that were used in each subject of the unit. All these materials were pretty simple. Either I already had them, my cooperating teacher or other teachers had them. Either I could buy them, some of them I bought at like the dollar store, and some of them I even made. But gathering materials and lessons and resources really made me learn how to collaborate with other teachers and get together with other teachers of the grade and even of the entire school to get ideas and to get things to improve my lessons and to improve myself as an overall educator. So let's start with math. So students went to 3 math stations every day. At the beginning of the school year, we assessed students in math, and they were in 3 different, depending on the results, they got placed into 3 different math groups. One was the high group, one was the middle group, and one was the low group. So those groups got different modifications depending on their level. So the high group, we were able to challenge them more at the different stations with different activities than the lower group, where we had to go back to the basic level to help them with the foundation of the standards before getting more and more challenging. So the 3 math stations each day are right here. The first one is math with the teacher, and this is when they would come to me on the carpet with their math notebook and their pencil box. We would do things such as interactive notebook page or introduce a new lesson. So as you see on this board, this was a lesson with math with the teacher when they got a number such as 24 and had to manipulate the magnetic base 10 blocks and move them around and push and pull them around to create 1 more, 10 more, 1 less, and 1 less with the number. So that was with math with the teacher. The next one's math with the buddy. That's when the students got with another student within their group and they played some type of math game or math activity that they got to work together to figure out. And the last one was math by myself. This is when students worked independently on work that they already knew how to do. This was just extra practice. So we didn't want students to get frustrated and do something that they didn't have any idea on. This was stuff that they already learned or at least got introduced to that they practiced on their own. And here are reading groups. Reading groups was similar to math groups, but instead of the different ability groups within the class, we put them in different ability groups within the whole grade. So all the low students in reading of the whole entire grade came to my class during reading. And each student got this right here, it's center time sheet, and these are the different centers that they worked on within the week. And it was their responsibility to get them all done. So each student, they all worked on number 7 on Monday. So this was always on Monday, and they would do an activity called Build It. And that's where they get their spelling words, which during this unit were all force type words such as move, jump, walk, push, pull, stuff like that, to where it integrated with the whole unit. And they would cut letters out of a magazine and glue them on a sheet to make the different words. They would all work on that Monday, and the rest of the week they would work on these. They would do 2 a day. So Tuesday was red. So let's say little Bob had number 5 and 6 circled on Tuesday in red. That means he'd have to work on fluency and word work on Tuesday, and if he did not get those finished, it was his responsibility to finish them. So number 5 is fluency, and here's an example of the fluency over here. This is when they would move the spinner and spin the spinner around, and whichever one they would land on, they would have to read a passage out of that voice. So maybe a baby voice or a rapper voice or a superhero voice, and they'd have to read that passage several times in different voices, which they loved. And the other one, for this example, would be word work over here, where they would write their spelling words and then draw them in the boxes. And while they were working on the centers, each day of the whole week, I would pull them to the back table, because they were in 3 different groups in my room, and we would do a guided reading lesson to teach them on more specific concepts such as characters and story elements and things such as that. So here were assessments. So I had 3 formal assessments in my overall unit. The first one was to measure what they already knew. The second one was given to see if students were actually learning. And the third one was to see how much they grew from the beginning. But even though those were the only 3 formal assessments, I also had other types of assessments, such as asking them questions to make them think deeper, collecting their activity sheets to give them feedback and give them back to them, and even just watching them work. A lot of our unit, especially with science, included experiments, and even just watching them work and seeing how they interact with each other and seeing who needs to participate more or who looks confused, and that's when I would step in and give them a little hand. But I made sure to assess the students every day in every lesson to see what they needed additional help with. So here's my first assessment. As you can see, it was a 2-sided worksheet, and it included every subject. We had a little bit of social studies and science and math and reading and even writing. Students did pretty poorly on this, as you'll see in a minute, but they really had no idea what they were doing, so that was understandable. So week 1, we had basic math and reading and everything that involved around forces or movement in some way. Here's a Venn diagram chart we did on the first week. I think this was on Tuesday or Wednesday, where we divided different actions in push, pull, or even actions you can do with both, such as a drumstick. You push the drumstick down, you pull it back up. Also, we made a schema chart where on the first day we wrote what they already knew about push and pull, which wasn't very much, and then at the end of each lesson we would come together, we would reflect together, and then we would write what we learned on sticky notes to add to that chart. So it was kind of cool to see within the week, 2 weeks, the chart grow with more and more sticky notes of things that they learned. They also got to explore around the room with different things they can push and pull and how to move a car without touching it. And then on Friday, we went to a field trip to the Sea Life Aquarium in Concord, and even though there was no actual instruction in the classroom, I still made sure to work with students some on the bus. So I had a magnetic cookie sheet and little magnets with letters and words on them and numbers, and I pulled a couple of students at a time on the bus, and we worked with that on the bus. So there was still some instruction involved. Here's a second assessment. You can see it's a little bit shorter, but it still involved everything. I did notice how students didn't do as well as I thought on the 10 more, 10 less, 1 more, 1 less boxes, so I made sure to include that on the next week. So I changed a few of my lessons around to have more of that in math. Week 2 had deeper math and more review on 1 more, 1 less, 10 more, 10 less, a little bit more of everything else. And with science, we talked about magnets, with how the magnets have different poles and how opposites attract, and a little bit of friction, and more on how to move items without touching them. So here's assessment 3. It was the same basic test, but we moved some of the letters around, some of the numbers around, and we changed some of the names. Here are the results. Over here is assessment number 1 in blue. As you can tell, they're pretty low. The average was a 30. Over here is assessment 2, and the average was 79. So they grew and they were getting a little bit better with their results. Assessment 3 is over here in red, and you can see they're even higher. And I saw that the average was 82, which is still great, but this made me realize, looking back at the test, let me go back here, that a lot of the questions involve them having to write. And as beginning first graders, they're still developing a lot of their writing skills, and so this was very difficult for some of them. So I think if I were to do this next time, I wouldn't include as many of those types of questions, and I'm sure that would make the points go up. But I still saw that they grew, and for the most part that they understood everything that was taught. So here are pictures from the unit. This was a math with a buddy station that you see here, where they had to manipulate and move numbers to create different numbers in math. Here's where they were building ramps to have their cars move without touching them. They were moving cars, not touching, but by blowing them and by tapping them with pencils. And that really made me see how when you get students to explore on their own, that they learn a lot more. More ramps and more movements. This was when students had to really learn on this lesson how like poles repel and opposites attract. They put magnets on top of cars and had to move them around different tracks. Alright, here's one of our last experiments we did. Students got different size straws, small straws and thicker straws, and they had to blow a ping pong ball and then measure to see how far they went and record it. Now, in this experiment, they were in groups of 5, and each person had a different job they had to do to help learn responsibility and group work in the group. So, with this one, they had to record how far each straw blew to see which straw moved it the best. And myself and my cooperative teacher was going around, and we were trying to help, and we both noticed how some of the groups weren't writing down the numbers perfectly or using the right style of tape measure, but we helped them a little bit, but for the most part we just still let them do it on their own. Since they are still very young, we just wanted them to see what they can do and to do the best they could, and this was still very effective, and they loved in this experiment. And here's where they did an experiment on basic friction and surface and different surfaces. So we gave them all a little pumpkin candy because it was right near Halloween, and they would go around the room and practice rolling them on different surfaces and twisting them around to see which surface helped things move the best and which one slowed them down or sped them up. So that was my unit. I love teaching this to my children. They learn so much from it, and I think I learned just as much. So thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.